So every day I feel like I'm sort of being washed over by a great wave, a wave called precarity. And our options for responding to this are somewhat limited. We can flee inward and try and stay dry, or we can allow ourselves to be washed out to sea. But it doesn't seem like either of these is any more or less precarious than the other. When Charles Manson met Squeaky Tom on a beach in 1966, he recruited her by saying that the way out of a room is not through the door. Just don't want out, and you're free. This feels especially apropos today under this harsh glare of this audience. The need to fit everything into 12 minutes and come off as generally coherent. But this bit of rhetorical nonsense offers us something of a way out. The sense that the real confinement isn't the room itself, but the desire to escape. It's a self-serving statement, but it also reveals some of Manson's influence. He was a great reader of Dale Carnegie, and his just on one outline reads something like a twisted hippie inversion of Carnegie's throw yourself into the working ethos. But is this really an answer? In today's labor conditions, out is the perpetual normal state, and there really isn't any permanent in. So while Manson and Carnegie suggest that we might be able to recover from this precarious state, is simply embracing it really a solution? Carnegie's project offers us a way to navigate office bureaucracy, the tools to subtly manipulate your way to the top. But this project assumes that the security of long-term employment, that there's a bureaucracy to manipulate, or that there will be anything for you to actually rise up to. The labor demands of the 70s, more intellectually stimulating, less monotonous work, were met with a response from capital that, according to French sociologist Luc Boltanski, in his book, The New Spirit of Capitalism, shifted the focus of labor away from so-called jobs for life to more casual, temporary, flexible labor. This shift was a way for capital to reassert control. Carnegie would have us believe at the end of all this friend-winning manipulation, corporate success offers a kind of professional security, a freedom and permanence. But it also suggests a kind of corporate cultishness, the promise of a world that doesn't really exist. The idea of security in a world that is gripped by precarity, where the pressure to get ahead is undermined by the pressure to simply hang on. To have a hope of riding this wave of precarity, we must first be able to define it. It was with an interest in this buzzword of political and social theory, a condition that seems both indeterminate and inescapable, that I began this project. I looked at a slate of novels from the last 25 years, and I also took a look at what some sociologists have to say. In their article, From Precarity to Precariousness and Back Again, Red Nielsen and Ned Rosser define precarity as a state of perpetual uncertainty, quoting Milanese activist Alex Fody, and further defining it as being unable to plan one's time, being a worker on call where your life and time are determined by external forces. This seems the most straightforward, all-encompassing definition. In The New Spirit of Capitalism, Boltanski and Yves Chiapello explore the shift from the focus being on the job to the focus being on projects, from long-term employment to the demands of staying employable. Melissa Gregg, in her book Work's Intimacy, explores the personal nature of this knowledge alongside the rise of telecommuting and advances in mobile technology, social networking, and the idea of work is something we do, becoming work is something that we just live. These writers all emphasize the affective effects, the psychic costs of this increasingly flexible workforce. But what do we make of all this? How do we see this in action? If you're like me, you turn to literature, itself a form of knowledge work. I'm mostly interested in the office setting, that boring old beige and fluorescent box in which so much of this effective labor takes place. So I chose some recent fiction where the office setting figures prominently, ultimately choosing two novels less for their literary merits than for how they use this setting, and because they offer different accounts of precarity. Douglas Copeland's zeitgeisty 1995 novel Microserves follows a group of young computer programmers as they decamp from the cocoon of Microsoft's Redmond, Washington office and its present but invisible leader, Bill, for the wild tech frontier of Silicon Valley, trading the perceived prestige of a job at Microsoft's main campus for a table in the living room at Mom's house. In David Foster Wallace's posthumous 2011 novel, The Pale King, the classic image of professional stability, the government civil service job, becomes the primary producer of psychic enemy. And the brutal stability of this monotonous work becomes yet another version of precarity. Microservice is dominated by the lack of security that characterizes the condition of precarity. Microsoft is presented as fraternal, a company where everyone wants Bill's attention. Bill, be my friend, please. Bill is not only Microsoft's corporate leader, but its effective leader as well. If Bill drove a Shriner's go-kart to work, the narrator concludes, everybody else would too. Bill offers not only a clean, potentially well-paid place to work, but a way to be in the world. Everyone at Microsoft, with its offer of compensation for vested stock, is a potential Bill. But this Redmond womb, which might seem secure on the surface, operates on the condition of precarity both in thought and practice. The promise of vested stock offers not security, but another form of precarity, subject, as Nielsen and Rossiter remind us, to crisis, risk, and uncertainty. The up and down of Microsoft stock is, the narrator who monitors it constantly, a real psychic yo-yo, a constant reminder that while it is possible to make money, it is also possible to lose it just as quickly. The yo-yoing underlies a greater insecurity, the knowledge that Microsoft is not a job for life. The narrator knows that the time it takes for the stock to vest, 4.5 years, is potentially longer than the lifespan of one of Bill's employees, all of whom have an estimated time of departure from Microsoft of within 5 years. The possibility of attaining any capital is itself overshadowed by the possibility that even if you get any stock, you won't be around long enough for it to mean anything. Or if you are, the stock could always lose value. The promise of investment, the proximity to Bill, these things are the shiny stick that allows them to imagine the carrot. These are the things that hail them. The characters only ever exist as subjects. They're constantly being interpolated, but in a portrayal that anticipates the condition described later by Melissa Gray, where social networks turn mere contacts into friends, the interpolation of microservice operates on an intimate level. The novel opens with this. One of the characters, Michael, described as the most sensitive programmer in Building 7, receives an email directly from Bill. Here, Althazar's generic "Hey you there" is replaced with a more familiar "Hey Michael." This does not require return to head to imply subjection. It assumes it. And the interpolation is so complete that the other characters only wish it would happen to them. Bill's email, even when it's a flaming critique of Michael's work, is tinged with glamour. And the other workers are jealous that this blistering email was not directed at them. Their subjection is complete, leaving them with a desire for the certainty, faint as it may be, that comes with recognition. Like Flask's honor at being kicked by such a man as Ahab, they all want to be flamed by Bill. But even as friends are not about criticism, writing itself is always a bit precarious. Greg charts the growth of telecommuting alongside the rise of social media, particularly MySpace and Facebook, two platforms she mentioned side by side, which suggests that we live in such an accelerated age that nearly every utterance is outdated the moment it is made. If microservice presents an image of certainty, we might be tempted to believe that the opposite of this, certainty, some kind of guarantee, would be the opposite of precarity. But Nielsen and Rossiter remind us that regular work is just another version of precarity, consuming time, energy, and effective relations, as well as producing the anxiety that results from the financialization of daily life. Lane Dean Jr., Wallace's precarious IRS accountant, has perhaps the most secure job, an apparently stable home, and he knows what to expect day in and day out. He is also the character operating under the greatest duress. He experiences the opposite of intimacy, existing in a state of near total isolation. The security of his job is the point from which the anxiety originates. And part of Lane Dean's anxiety, as we follow the rapid deterioration of his mental state, is that he wants out of the room. His IRS training has oriented him to think out, to just imagine that he is somewhere else when he gets bored. Lane Dean spends much of his energy following this procedure, even when he knows it doesn't work. The focus on out only reminds him of how in he really is. Unlike the programmers in microserves, Lane Dean has no intimate work relationships. He's alienated from the anonymous they that runs the office, and from the work that he cannot ever do fast enough. But what do we do about this? These literary representations don't offer any sense that precarity can be undermined. The solution seems to be that precarity can never really be overcome, only endured. Work never ends, it only becomes more ingrained. Microserves ends with the sense, without any sense that their situation is improved, beyond a vague notion that things are going fine, an assessment that is itself immaterial. Precarity is not undermined here, the intimacy is only further deepened. The precarity never ends for Lane Dean either. After processing countless tax returns and falling asleep at his desk, he ends up back where he started, with work to do and time not passing. He can't undermine his own precariousness because he cannot even settle on what to call it. But while time never passes for Lane Dean, it has passed for me.